from all over the world are joining today. It's very good to see. I'm a former colleague of Heidi, and now I'm working in a bank in controlling. So where I work mainly with SQL, trying to make sure that the right data goes from A to B. And today I want to show you some tricks that I've learned how to model your data in the right way to build reports. Yes, and I think I start with sharing my screen. So, right, can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes, we can see that. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So, what I'm using today is a Postgres database. You can download it for free. There are different databases, and the SQL dialects might differ in different databases. So today we're using Postgres SQL. And for those of you who are working with Tableau, I think you know the data set called Bookstore. So this is a data set that has different tables that we are using today. So you can download them for free if you want to, try to do it yourself. So the plan for today is we are a bookstore. So what we do is we buy books and then we sell them books. And what we want to know is, for example, at the end of each quarter, how many books do we have in our bookstore? Then we want to know how many books did we sell per quarter. And we want to know the amount of revenue for each month. So this is the general setup. I'll show you the data. It's here. This is the Postgres database that I was talking about. We are using 4 tables, as you can see here. They're called, we have the information about the author, we have the books, different editions of the books, and we have the trading dates. So if we have a look, here is here are the books. So we have a book ID with the title and an author ID to join it with the author data. In the edition table, here we have the information about the price of each book, which we need. And in the last table, here we have the information for each book. When did we buy this book and when have we sold the book? Okay, so this is the general setup that we're in. So, and if I go back here. So, now if you are familiar with SQL and working with SQL, when I started in SQL, what I did was I tried to, to compute everything in one single query. Which can be quite difficult. So it is very handy to use different queries to split up the different steps that you need to model your data in the right way and to compute KPIs that you need, that you get from different tables. So what I have found really, really handy is to use subqueries that you can refer to later. So you have, different steps. And then at the end, you make the main select statement that you join the data that you have built up in the subqueries at the beginning. So the advantage is if you have a look at your SQL statement like half a year later, where you can't remember what you did there, then it's far more easy to understand the different steps that you needed to get to the results. So how do we do this? There's a statement that starts with a with. In the Postgres SQL, you need the recursive to. In other databases, you just need the with. But what you do is you start with the with, and then you have the different subqueries. So this is the first subquery. You have to give it a name. So the table one is just the name of the subquery, so that at the end here, this is the main select statement. There you refer to the table that you have created here. So you can define, I think, as many tables as you want. So here we have a subquery. Here we have a second subquery, and at the end, in the select statement, we can build these data together as we need it. So this is the first thing that I want to show you, how to use subqueries. Then I work in controlling. We have to report on a monthly or on a quarterly basis. So what we need is we have to set up a calendar to make sure to have the different quarters or months separated from each other. So what we do is we set up a calendar in the SQL statement. I'll show you in a minute how to do that. The idea is we set up the calendar so we don't use data from an already existing table, but we build this calendar in the SQL statement. So what we need is we need a starting date. And then we union the date, the table with itself, and then add an interval. And in our case, we are interested in the quarters. So what we do is we set a starting date and then add a quarter and another quarter. Important is to set up a condition to avoid an infinite loop. So as you can see in a minute, here is the statement. So again, we set up the subquery, which is this one. The table is called calendar. This is the field that we're using. You can give it any name that you want. In this case, I called it date column. And here we have the starting date. In Postgres SQL, if you just want to show the date, you don't need a from condition. There are other databases where you have to have a from condition here. But again, in Postgres, you don't need it. So what you do is you set up the starting date, and then you union this date plus the interval from the calendar, so from the table itself, as long as this condition is met. Okay, so this is the theory, and now I show you in the database. So, okay, I need a new query. Okay, so we start with setting up the starting date. select, and the data that we're using is a little bit confusing because it's much in the future. So the starting date is in 2178. Oh, sorry, you can't see. 2008. We use the end of the year. So if we use the date, we have to define it. This is a date with timestamp. So, and now if I execute the query, this is our result. So this is just one column, one row with the date that I defined here. So, and now, as I said, I want to add an interval to this date. So what I do is I use the with statement that I showed you. So with recursive. So now I define the table. I call it calendar. So this is just a name, okay? Calendar. This is the name of the subquery. Then I have to name the field. So this field, I have to give it a name. I call it end of quarter. So as you can see, this is the end of the quarter. I need an S, and here so this is the subquery, and what I want to do is so, and I want to union this, select. So I want to union this plus 1 quarter. And this field, it's called end of quarter. Here I have to define the name of the field. So what I do is I take the field and we add the interval. And in this case, it's 3 months. So from here, we need a from calendar. And as I told you, now we need to set a condition that it doesn't go on forever. Okay, so we have to use a where statement, so a condition when to stop. And this is when this one, copy paste, smaller than, it's again a timestamp. And the condition that I set, it's the year 2193. So, okay, this is the first subquery that I have defined. And if I want to see the result, then I have to use the main select. Okay, so the main select, I just want to see the field called end of quarter. And now I click on run and I have a spelling mistake. And I have another mistake. Let's Okay, have I made a mistake? Okay, I try to name the field. No, okay, sorry. I'm I'm confused. Because what I have forgot is here in the select statement, I have forgot to tell where it's from. So I need the from statement here. So from, and the subquery, it's called calendar. So we want to have from calendar. So yes, now we have what we wanted. And as you can see, this is the result. Here we have our field called end of quarter, and we're starting at December 78. And then we have the end of March, end of June. And as you can see, till that's the end. Here, till our condition is met, which is smaller than this one. Okay, so this is the calendar that we're using. And okay, so I could use this as a quarter, but I've decided to have a field that gives me, that makes it clearer which quarter we're looking at. So I'm adding another column, and I call it quarter. So as you can see here in the subquery, I added a second column. And now what we want to have is we want to extract the year from this date. So date part year from this expression. Then I want to add a Q. So it's just here I can do whatever I think looks nice. So now I have to add the quarter. So I just copy paste and replace year with quarter. And I name this field as, we have defined it in this way. So quarter. And the same in the second part. We have, no, it's just copy and paste to make our life easier. Copy paste. Now we want to have the year of this calculation. So copy paste. Okay, and copy paste this part. And again, we need to replace this one. So I've added a second column, and if we want to have a look at it, it's called quarter. I hit run. So now it looks a little bit nicer and easier to read. So here we have our different quarters. Okay, so this was the first part, setting up a calendar. Now I go back to my PowerPoint. So we set up the calendar. And now I want to show you another thing that I've learned. So there's a partition by clause that we're having a look at. If you are aggregating your data, then you can, select, then use minimum or maximum or a sum of a field from a table, and then we have to group by the whole table. But if you only want to group one field and not the whole table, you can use a partition by. So we always have an aggregation like sum or average or whatever. And then the group by is like separately defined for each field. So the statement looks like this. Here we have to define the aggregation, which field we want to aggregate. Then we have an over. And in the brackets here we have the partition by. So for example, if we look at monthly data, we have a row for each month, and we want to know the average for the whole year. What we would do is here we would use average over partition by and then the year. So then we have in our result, we have the average of each year. But if the rest of the data is still on a monthly basis, then we duplicate our rows. So just to keep that in mind. And this looks like follows. So now we need our second subquery. This one was the first. And now we have the second subquery. We call it sales. So this is the name as. And now in these brackets, we define the query. So we have a select. Okay, so I think it's sensible to look at the data. So here we have the information. When did we sell our books in the sales data? The information, how much they cost, is here in the addition table. Here we have the price. So we have to join these two tables to get to know for each date how much did we sold. So what we do, okay, so the table that we're using is it's called bookshop trading dates. Trading dates. Then we give it an abbreviation. We use T. Join it with the addition table. On. Now we have to find the fields that we want to join on. So it's the book ID. So the book ID in one table has to be the same as in the other table. Okay. So this is the information where we want to get the data from. And now we have to define what do we want to know. First, we want to know the sale date, which comes from this table called trading dates. So here we have a sale date. And then we want to know how much, did we sold. So we take the sum of the price. And now we're using the partition by that I have shown you. So what we do is we want to sum how many books have we sold. So we sum these that are not null. Okay. So what we do is sum. So, and then we use a case when. So when the sale date, so T sale not null. Okay, so we have a sale date, then one else 0. Okay, so what this does, when we have a sale date, use a 1, else a 0, and we sum it, okay? So we just count how many sales date do we have. But now we're using the partition by because we want to partition by. We want to know how many books have we sold per quarter. So this is this is on a daily basis. We have the information. When have we bought the book? When have we sold the book on a daily basis? And we want to know for each quarter how many books have we sold. So what we do is we count the books that we have sold per quarter. And the per quarter comes in the partition by. So per quarter is, in this case, we have to take the quarter out of the sale date. So this is date trunk. We want to take out the quarter of the sale date. And we give it a name, books sold. Okay, so, and we group this by the month. Okay, so we copy paste. So, and this is a, oops, sorry. This is the second subquery that we have set up right now. But what we can do is we can just see the result for the subquery. So what I do is I just mark the subquery. Okay, I start with the select. Okay, I think I have to make it, sorry. Okay. Okay, so now we can see that in the group by, it wants to have the sale date, because what I have forgotten here is to use the month. Okay, so what I do is I copy the group by condition and replace it here. And now we run the subquery. And it doesn't want to do what I want to do. Okay, then we try to use just the sale date. Okay. So now we have each sale date. We see how high our sales were and how many books we have sold in the quarter. Okay. So if we go back to the PowerPoint. So this is the partition by that I've showed you. And the last thing that I want to show you today is sometimes you have like flow numbers and you want to transfer them to stock numbers. In our case, we just have the information when have we bought each book, when have we sold each book. But what we want to know is at the end of each quarter, how many books were there in our store. We don't have the information right now, how many books there were at the end of the quarter. But what we do is we use the starting date and the end date and see how many books were there at the end of the quarter. There comes the calendar handy that we've built up right at the beginning. So now we use these dates from the calendar. And we join the data where we have the information about the start date and the end date and see how many books were there for each end of quarter. So we have the calendar, join it with the table 2. And now the condition, how we join on, looks like this. So we have the date from the calendar, and this date should be between the starting date and the ending date. If the ending date is not reached at the moment where we use this SQL statement, then we have to replace the null value with today. Okay. So we use the calendar, join it with the other table where we have a start date and the end date, and see how many books we have for each end of quarter. So then we have another subquery. I call it stock at the end of the quarter. So now I have to define the query. We need unselect. Then, as I said, from the calendar, a left join. So here, this is the table that we have the information. It's called trading dates. Here we have the start date and the end date. So what we do is we join called bookshop trading dates. On the field is called end of quarter. And this is between the starting date, it's called purchase date, and the what's it called, sale date. But we have books that are not sold yet. So here's a null, and we want to have these in our result. So we have to replace the null. Otherwise, it wouldn't be counted. This is not what we want. So we have to replace the null value, and here we use coalesce. And again, the data is in the future. So if we have a look at the past here, I would simply write today or current day. But now we have to set up a date that's way in the future. Timestamp, and the date is 93. Okay, so and now I just need the quarter. And now we just count the book IDs. Give it a name. Book stock end of quarter. Okay, so now in this case, I can't just run the subquery because this calendar refers to the first subquery that we have. So if I would just run this subquery, then I'll get an error because the calendar is not defined. So now I have to go to the main select statement at the end. And in this case, we have quarter from the okay, this is the name. I just copy paste it, the subquery quarter, and the second field is called book stock from okay, so now I just refer to this subquery and I click on run and we have an error. Okay, and what's the error? Okay, stock end of quarter.
I think you may be missing a comma between different subqueries.
Ah, yeah. Thank you, Heidi. Okay. No. Okay. Now I have missed the group by. So I think this is the reality of working with SQL, error after error. And then finally you figure it out. Okay, and group by this one, we want to group it by the quarter. Okay. So now for each quarter, we have the information, how many books were there at the end of the quarter. So now we have different subqueries, so calendar, sales, and stock, end of quarter. And now here in the main select statement at the end, now we can stack the data together how we need it. Depends on the report that you want to show or whatever. So for example, select, we use the sale date. Okay, I think I start at the end with the joining the tables. So we have the sales table and join it with the stock end of quarter. On the quarterly data. So we have in the sales so here we have not a quarterly date, so we have to define the quarterly date. Date part quarter from the sale date. And paste. And now here we need a year and quarters so that this field looks exactly like the quarter that we have defined earlier. So now what we want to have is we want to have the sale date, the sales, how many books we've sold quarterly. And the quarter. Okay, so this is our main select statement. Just to make sure I've ordered the data, order by the sale date. And there's the next mistake. Sales. Okay, so here I have forgotten to name the fields. So I have to give them names. And sales, here it is. Okay, so now we were able to bring the data together. We have the sale date, we have the sales, we have the information how many books we have sold per quarter. And here we have the quarter itself. I think I have forgotten one field. We have forgot how many books there were at the end of the quarter. So book stock at the end of the quarter in the query. So, and now here we have the information how many books we have in our store at the end of the quarter. So just to give you a quick recap. The first subquery, we've set up the calendar to have the end of the quarter. Here we have a second subquery with the sales where we use the partition by to have the information for each quarter, how many books have we sold. And in the third subquery, here we have the information how many books were there in store at the end of the quarter. And we did this by joining the calendar between the starting date and the ending date. And at the end, in the main select, we brought all the data together. Okay. So this is what I wanted to show you today. So if you have any questions or comments.
Yes, that was great. Thank you, Corinna. So we do have a few questions. Our first question comes from Vince, and he says that he used a GUI called dbeaver for programming in Postgres before, and it helped speed development up a lot. Do you personally prefer to program in the browser or in a different environment?
Okay. Where I work at, we use DB Visualizer. Because we have two different databases, one Oracle and one DB2, and yeah, I think DB Visualizer is great for me. Yep.
Okay. We had one question from Violet who asked, like, you mentioned the coalesce function. Like where you distribute null values. I don't know how far behind your Tableau times are, but would you say that that it's the same function as the if null function that we have in Tableau?
Yes, basically it's the same. I think coalesce is more powerful because okay, but basically it's the is null. When you have different fields that are all null values, what the coalesce is, it checks for the first null value and then replaces it. But yeah, it's the same as replace null. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And one question, you mentioned in the beginning that there are some slight differences in the SQL terminology depending on which database you're working with. Do you find it difficult to transition from one SQL-based database to another? Like, do you have to relearn a lot of the SQL?
As long as you have Google, you're fine. Because where I work at, we have two different databases, and it's I find it really hard to remember which formula to use for which database. So yeah, I just Google it and. But I think that's the easier part, to know which formula you're looking for. Then it's just easier. Just need the right syntax. So I think it's more difficult to to know what you are looking for. But then if you have Google or if you have a book or something, then you're fine.
Yeah, I've found that a good documentation really is absolutely invaluable. Like if you don't have a good documentation for any kind of language, you're just basically screwed. We have a couple more questions. Can we use alias name? Can we use the alias name given in subquery 1 in any other subquery?
the alias. Oops. So the name of the whole table, or the alias that we're using for the field?
I'm not entirely certain, but why don't you answer both?
Yeah. Okay. So you can refer to the table name. So that is what we did in the last query. Yeah, and then I think you can refer to, to the year to quarter, for example. So if you have in your from, in the sub, where is the subquery? Yeah, in this subquery we used the calendar, and we refer to the quarter as quarter, and the quarter was defined here.
Okay, perfect.
So yes.
That's great, thanks. We have another question from Marine, and she asked, how long does it take to develop this kind of skill level in SQL?
It's hard to say. So for me, I've started with different programs, for example, Alteryx, or in university, I've had different programming languages like R or Stata or something like this. So yeah, I don't know. It's a whole process of understanding data, of understanding data modeling, and in my job that I'm currently at, I've working a lot with already existing SQLs. So I think the best way to learn is to see what other people already did, what other people have already set up, and to basically learn from your colleagues, or from occasions like this.
Okay, any concrete materials that you can recommend for like first steps in SQL?
There are so many books and so many online resources. I did actually do it's very basic, but I think it's from the University of Constance or something. It's an online game where you I think you're like a pirate or something on an island, and then you have to solve a quiz with using basic SQL statements. I think this was quite fun. Yeah.
That sounds pretty fun. Be sure to pop me the link afterwards. And I'll definitely include that in the follow-up email. So yeah, one of the attendees recommended Code Wars, which is apparently a free platform to practice different languages. And Lina says that the one you mentioned is probably SQL Island.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right. That seemed to have been all the questions. Yeah, a number of recommendations in the chat. So for anybody looking to find some recommendations, check out the chat. And again, I will include anything that Corinna mentioned afterwards. As we don't have any further questions here, I will share my screen for a second. Thank you so much, Corinna. That was really valuable. I especially liked seeing the small difficulties in between, because like from my experience, and many attendees said the same in the chat, like that's just how it actually goes, like looking for the tiny mistakes and then checking line 589 for whatever is happening there or not happening there. So thank you so much. All right, for anybody looking forward to the next event already, that will be on December 1st. So just a very few weeks from today. I think it's 4 weeks to go. And we will have a Christmas special. I know I announced that already in the past events, but I'm still very much excited about this one because it's coming out, it's coming together really, really well. And we are bringing together not only Data Plus Women Germany, but also Amsterdam, Zurich, Luxembourg, Normandy, London, and all the European chapters. So we are doing a whole European event here. And we have a number of keynote speakers. So we will have Anna and Iliana from Picnic, a Dutch company, who will have a fireside chat about working in a virtual world with home office and COVID and everything going on. And then we will also have Kayla Schwartz of Salesforce talking about trends, holiday trends in retail sales. So definitely sign up for that event. I'm very excited about it. We will also have a quiz and you can win stuff. So look out for that quiz as well. And yes, make sure to sign up and join us on December 1st. And with that, the official part of this event is over, and I will stop the recording in a second. If you want, please feel free to stick around for some informal networking. I will make anybody who's still on the call a panelist so that you can unmute yourselves and share your camera if you want, and just chat to Corinna and me about anything you just saw Corinna demo or any other questions you have. Thank you so much for anybody dropping out. Have a great rest of the week and see you in 4 weeks on December 1st for our Christmas special.